Let's put something in this space rather than my face. Let's make a building.
Second part of Marvel Crisis Protocol. We're back with some terrain buildings to add on to the boards that we built last week. So first thing that I want to do is I want to size up. This is a test building that I did, a lot smaller than the one I'm going to do today. Take some quick measurements and just confirm with myself how much space we have on the board. So this is about 12 inches by 8 inches, as those are 4-inch squares. So the first step I want to do after that is take a measurement of a standard size mini. Toad is pretty standard across Marvel Crisis Protocol. He's under 2 inches, so I'm going to say that each floor should be roughly 2 1/4. And when I measure out this portion of the foam core that I have from the dollar store, it's just about 7 inches, so that's perfect for a 3-story building. Don't have to do much trimming at top. So now I'm just going to lay it out, and I'm going to cut out each wall individually. This building, I don't want it to be square. I want it to have an angular front. So we're going to have 5 sides total. I'll throw all the dimensions down in the comments to lay out how this building is going to go. Make sure when you're cutting foam, you lay the knife as flat as you can. Make multiple shallow cuts, and this will minimize tearing and otherwise making a very rough, uneven edge for you. And here we go. I pinned all of it together, wanted to get an idea of how it would look, make sure I had the sizes right, and make sure it fit well on the board. I'm pleased with how it is here, so now we're going to move on to the next stage. And that next stage is marking out the windows. This is the back one, so on the back I'm only going to have large windows on like the first, second-ish floor. So the way I'm laying this building out is the first 2 floors are really one. So I wanted it to be maybe a venue, and this building kind of grew and made its own identity as I went. So I'm marking out where the second floor would be. I'm making multiple lines across because I just don't have a right angle with me. So if I make out multiple marks, then that allows me to get a relatively straight line. And I find the center of the board, move 1 inch on either side, then move 2 inches over there. And that's going to give me a large 2-inch window that are evenly spaced across the back of this building. So here I'm really just testing out a couple different measurements, see how I like, see where the window would fit best. I'm taking my time with this, making a couple little mocks, seeing what it'll look like if I drop the window down to this area. And then I'll hold the mini up to it, see how it would look with the mini standing inside of the building or outside. And if you'll see a couple of X's over any lines, that's just lines I didn't want to use. X amount to make sure that when I'm connecting everything, I don't get that mixed up. Now just the simple step of cutting out the windows. Same as before, flat, smooth cuts. Do them shallow. Cut a little bit beyond where you want it, just so that you can have a little bit of a cleaner cut on the corners. You might have to flip it over and clean up the paper on the back. And blammy! The back of the window with the back of the building is all set. These are going to be the front 3 panels. These ones are way more involved than the back part of the building. You can see the back and a little bit of the side of the back there. So the front though is going to have doors. It's going to have the top floor of windows. They're going to be much smaller. And make sure that you write on each one of them what part of the building it is. This part here is very quick and easy to get it confused. You don't want to accidentally do one upside down or get one swapped up with one that's just a little bit different. And I found this mason jar ring that was perfect to get an archway on the door going in. And I'm not going to carve out 8 bazillion little bricks. Instead, I'm going to take this plastic card that I found at the hobby store that's for railroad terrain, and I'm going to use that for all the sides of the building. So you lay it out, mark out where your window is that you want it to be kind of precise on this one, then cut it out after the fact. Don't cut it out after you glue it on, which is what I did on my test building, it was increasingly difficult. What I'm showing there though is that I bumped up the lines for each one to match with the lines of the brick so that a brick wasn't cut in half. It made sense, it was a smooth transition. And then when I cut these ones out after gluing it down to the foam core on the test building, I had very unclean cuts. It was very difficult to make it look right, and I spent way too much time trying to pretty it up. Just was not working. Cut it first, cut it a little bit smaller if you want to than your window, and then it's going to look just fine in the end. You'll kind of notice there that the lines go out a little bit further than they should, and that's just so my eye has somewhere to sit when I start and finish the blade, as I'm not going to see the entire layout of the window when I go to do this. And just like that, it's done. Before you move on, size it out first. Lay it down, see how it fits. And oh, what is this? Some glaring white spots. Well, we can't have that. This is another one that on my test building I did after the fact. Don't skip this part. Do it beforehand. It's going to be a lot quicker. You can use paint, you can use a marker, you can use anything you want. Clean up all the sides. And now we're just skipping ahead. We get over to the front angled area of the building, line up the brick, make sure it's fitting right and you don't have it on there backwards, and take a very wet brush, just some regular PVA, and make sure you spread that around everywhere. Get all the corners, all the sides especially. Make sure you have the brick facing the right way. I came very close to putting that on backwards. This is expensive and it's hard to find locally, and this will bend and bow with glue, so make sure you put something heavy on it and let it sit overnight. Here now, I didn't show painting in the windows. I just used an intermittent blue from Vallejo. That's a blue-gray. It gave a good base to like a glossy window. In my mind, it was a very comic-esque feel. And now I'm going to take these matchsticks. I painted each one of them with contrast paint Black Templar. I'm cutting them down to size. I'm going to leave the windows at the bottom very big and open, and up top just make a middle support frame. Now I take more of that intermittent blue and I mix it in with a really rich blue, and this is ultramarine blue, and this is by Reaper. Mix up a good combination of it and start to get streaking base laid out. Now mix it up with your favorite white and just give the final streaks of the sun glaring off the window. And here's a look of it, all kind of laid out, just set on top of each other. And I'm going to take these little foam blocks, and this is going to add two features. One, the roof is going to sit on it, and two, it's going to give more support and more substance to be glued on as you go from side to side. That way it's not just the edge of the foam core. As you can see that right here. Also, what you can see right here is the back of the windows. It is just black cardstock. Nothing fancy. I tried using something fancy on the test building. It looked okay. It added a lot of support, but once painting it, it fell apart in its looks. I didn't really like it. I'm going to stick with the black cardstock from here on out. Also, when putting together the sides on my test one, I only used hot glue. Did it work? Absolutely. Was it a clean process? Absolutely not. There was a lot of bowing. I couldn't get it to sit flush. So on this one, I initially tried doing just PVA glue, and I held it for 10 plus minutes at some points, and it still was kind of bowing and coming apart a little bit. So I put the PVA glue on the foam, I put it on the sides, I pressed it together, then I came in with the trusty hot glue to hold it up in place just a little bit and let that set. Now I want to give this building some character, some real downtown vibes. And I'm from a suburb of Cleveland, and nothing says downtown vibes more than boarded up windows. So this is just a couple of small pieces of popsicle sticks with some contrast paint, that very much so comes across as stain, and gluing it on. This glue isn't going to hold these on very well to the plastic, so make sure you're either using PVA glue or glue it onto the wood. And here we've got some 1/2-inch strips, 5 of them, one for each corner of the building. I went and tried to do this on a straight edge, on the edge of a table, on the edge of a mat, to get a real clean, crisp edge. None of them worked. But just pressing them together, it was small enough, it was even, it was precise, and it worked great. So on my last one, my test one, I did this with glue stick, and on this one I tried to do it with PVA glue. Neither of them really worked that well. So what I don't show doing here that I did kind of off camera is I brought out the super glue. Lined each side of it, stuck it up there, and it fit perfectly. Now the dome of this door, obviously before I glued the building together, I thought to myself again, downtown venues, what do they do for arches? More boards. So I'm taking a bunch of matchsticks, glue them on down to that arch, build it up the entire way. It's going to add a little bit of character, a little bit of variance to this build. Not everything is going to be brick. And I just didn't like the way that these were sitting. I didn't think they were going to hold up the strongest. So, extremely wet brush, PVA glue, brush it over the top, just to give a little bit more strength across the top of all of that. And this is Gore Grunter Fur contrast paint. I think it looks absolutely fantastic on wood. When I lay this down on my workbench, it blends in very well. It looks very close to the stain that I used. And it acts very similar to stain when you put it on wood. So I would highly recommend this contrast paint on any wood that you wanted that deep, rich, stained color. There we go. You can do a little bit more in some spots. And here's another thing that it worked initially, but not in the long run. More PVA glue, and this is going to go on the back. It will hold up fairly well to the paper that's on the back of the foam core. But when I start messing with it, I start trying to size the door up, kept falling off. I ended up hot gluing it on. It set flush enough. It still looked like it was slightly recessed. It was a good fit, and in the end, a win. Onto the door. I line up some matchsticks on the foam core that was cut out from where the door was. Give it a rough frame. This is nothing complex, nothing overly fancy, and I'm just using PVA glue and zipping on down to all the sides. What I don't show is I'm going to take this outside, I'm going to prime it black so that all the wood is black frame just like the windows. Bring it back in, and I'm going to use intermittent blue and that same ultramarine blue, but I'm going to lean a lot more heavily on the ultramarine blue to make these look like maybe stained glass or just blue wood. Leave it up to your imagination, however you look at it and see it is fit. Now this is the last bit of character I'm going to add to the build for now, and that is the posters. This really became a music venue at this point. Really made me think of all the different ones I would go to, whether it be downtown Cleveland or if I would travel out of state for some shows. And all of them, every single reach within hand reach, there was a poster on there. There is a poster on top of a poster, and there's a poster on top of a poster on top of a poster. So I found this PDF online. It was just a free picture, printed it out, cut them all out, and I've got all sorts of variations. Right there you see Kiss. Kiss fans maybe a little bit more rowdy than some of the others, and they're going to stick their poster right on top of the glass. I'm just going to go through this. I really this was the most fun out of the entire build for me, is just putting myself in that element. I'm putting the poster up. Where would I put that poster up? And the other fun part of it was seeing all these bands and kind of just thinking, oh, I haven't listened to them in a little bit. Rush, I haven't listened to them in a little bit. And of course, after doing all this, I had to go back and listen to all these bands yet again. And that's another project done. This is my first real terrain building for Marvel Crisis Protocol or any urban modern style game that I've done. I did a test building before this that I learned a lot on. And then this one here was the go-to. I love the way it turned out. Made a couple mistakes along the way, but we always do. It's how we adapt with it. So before I hit the B-roll, I just want to say thank you for everybody who's made it this far, and thank you to anybody who stopped by and watched any of it. If you enjoyed it at all, like, subscribe, and check out my other social medias that are down in the descriptions. And here it is, the whole board, all the buildings I have, all laid out at once. I love the way that this turned out. I'm extremely excited. I'm extremely proud. The comic book vibe of it really pops out to me, blends in with the board. It works really well with the characters that I've painted. I honestly couldn't be happier with this. If you'd like any of the dimensions that I used in this, I'm going to put them down in the comments below, along with a full list of the materials that I used. So again, if you liked any of this, please like and subscribe. Check out the other social medias. I did a couple of live videos while I tested out the building on this. You could check more things like that over on TikTok. So until next time, Abuchinanas.